I'm Cal Corbin. I'm a software engineer at Clever here in Oklahoma City. I'm a self-taught coder like everybody else. I'll dig into that a little bit. Can you hear me? Get closer? Okay, cool. All right, oh, there we go. Even I hear the difference. All right, so I'm gonna talk about solving problems, not syntax. When you start out as a coder, especially assuming a lot of you are all with FreeCodeCamp, I mean, you're basically just learning syntax at that point. And it can feel overwhelming, especially when you get into the real world. So I'm gonna give you some tips to kind of ease that transition. First, I just wanna say, you have picked a frustrating hobby. This is my favorite coding meme of all time. It is, so I studied cello in college, then I got a degree in journalism and a degree in geography. And that's why I'm a software engineer. You know, like, I ended up just going with my frustrating hobby and becoming a software engineer someday because I was really bored at my first job out of college, and so I just started coding at work, which might have been morally dubious, but here we are. But yeah, we'll go on from there. And kind of what Galadriel was saying, like, I was a musician for the longest time, and the reason I love coding is it's the only thing that, to me, I still feel like I'm perfecting an art, and I'm making money this time, so that's a nice plus. So the whole point of this starting out too is to say I am not discouraging learning syntax. Learn your syntax, it's good. It's the foundation on whatever language you're writing in. Don't worry too much about language, just, you know, learn whatever is practical for you, but learn the syntax of the language, but it's not the be-all, end-all. After you learn that syntax, just get a linter and let it do it all for you. Save yourself some bandwidth because you've got problems to solve. You don't need to be worrying about semicolons. Just get a linter. If you have questions about what a linter is, you can message me on Slack. There's tons of great linters out there, depending on your language. I know quite a few, so just ask about it. I'm a big fan of ESLint in JavaScript. Just npm install ESLint, solves all my terrible mistakes. So when I first got out of doing like tutorials and all that, and then actually having to solve a problem at a company, I was horrified because I literally, you can't Google a tutorial on the problem you're given. If that was the case, they probably wouldn't have given you the problem. So actually having to solve a ticket and work on like an actual issue, it's really hard. It's a hard transition. So something I kind of wish I had known about way back, like 5 years ago. I wish I had found open source bugs back then and worked on those, because working on bugs for open source projects is a great way to really, one, you're seeing real problems in real software, and two, it gets you, you stop thinking about syntax, you're just like, oh my God, why doesn't my code work? And then you're Googling, you're working, and it's a great way to just start thinking like a programmer because you're forced to think like a programmer. Another way, and kind of, I'm doing this today, work on a side project, whatever you want it to be, whatever you're interested in. I like thinking MVPs and minimum viable products. I like thinking of just like little products that make my life easier, solve little problems, stuff like that. Write it in the language that you want to write in. I love React, so I'm writing my side projects in React. Also, if you don't have time for side projects, you know, you don't have to do them. Don't break your back. You don't learn this stuff in a day. All right, what's next? Oh, this is like my #1 tip. Like, anytime I can't solve something, like if it's been 30 minutes and I'm looking at code and I can't solve it, I do SUDOKU. You don't have to do SUDOKU. That's my personal preference. I also suggest going for walks, taking showers. There's some science behind this where you get your head out of what you're trying to solve and the answer comes to you. Just working in software for 5 years and coding, I would say I've had that proven time and time again. Whenever I stop looking at the code is when I realize how to fix it. So SUDOKU is also really fun. I love it. This is kind of what Devin was saying earlier too. Like if you've played like 4 rounds of SUDOKU and you're just still really confused, get out the notebook and literally write it down. Just write it down, break down your problems, Pseudocode helps a lot, comments. Any way you can just start breaking it down into smaller pieces. I kind of like, this is more like a Jira board thing, but I was kind of telling Devin about it. Like, if you can put the problem on a Post-it, and you can read the Post-it from about here, that means you've got the problem nailed down. So if you need like 10 Post-its with all your problems in a chain, do it that way. You know, whatever works for you. But write the problem down so you start thinking through it. It helps get your brain also, just like the Sudoku, get your brain out of the narrow space that you kind of get into and you're really wedged into those problems. Ask for help and talk to people. There's mean devs out there, and there's also nice devs. Ask for help from the nice devs. They exist. There's quite a lot of them in Techlahoma. Sometimes, they call this, you might have heard of this, they call it rubber ducking, but basically, sometimes, and this has happened to me plenty of times, after I actually just say my problem out loud to somebody, I realize the answer as I'm asking for help. So sometimes just putting it in English and verbalizing that really just solves your problem. But even if that doesn't, ask for help and talk to people, because everybody has a different perspective, and a lot of times other people will see what you don't see in your code. Show them your code, all that, don't be afraid. And that kind of goes into my next one, code review. If you're in the kind of place where somebody can actually look at your code and review it, take advantage of it. I think the most I've learned, or let me say that, the most I've learned while coding is from the feedback I've gotten in code reviews. I have to swallow my ego because, you know, when I think I write perfect code, and turns out I repeated everything millions of times and I could have written one tiny function to solve all my problems. I wouldn't have learned that if I hadn't done code review. And even if you can't do code review in some sort of formal setting, just showing people what you've got, either in Slack or a group, a friend, you know, whatever you can find, give it a try. I think there is some online code review options out there. I've never used them, but I've also had random people go on my GitHub and tell me what's wrong with my code, and I'm like, who are you? But, you know, it also made me look at that function a little more closely, so I don't know why he was looking at my stuff, though. But, yeah, you know, just show your code to people, get feedback. It kind of goes back to that process of just once you are forced to, like, verbalize your problem, you understand it better. Oh, yeah, this is kind of my last point. It doesn't happen overnight, but sometimes it does. This has happened to me a million times. Just go to bed, take a break, and then you'll wake up and realize, oh, this is the easiest problem ever, and then you go solve it. Like, you don't have to lose your sanity on these like incredibly hard problems, because once you're actually out there solving these tickets for companies, it's gonna be hard, but it's gonna get easier over time. But it's gonna be hard for quite a bit. That's why it's a frustrating hobby. So give yourself a break when you need to, because, I mean, the brain is a very complicated thing, but it also needs breaks. It's a muscle. Give it a chance. So, yeah, that's it. Any questions? If you do, on that part about talking to people and you have questions, shoot me a message on the Techlahoma Slack. I can give you bad advice. So.